Revolution. Next. Stare. All right, so it's by the women, for the women vote, and we have come a long way, and I hope that this inspires people to see just how far we've come as we continue to do the work that needs to be done. Next. So Phyllis Wheatley, back in 1773, published a book of poems, and she had to first prove that she was the author of those poems because people of that day, white people, found it difficult to believe that an African slave was writing excellent poetry. So she had to defend her authorship of her poetry in court in 1772. She was examined by a group of Boston luminaries, including John Irving, John Hancock, and the governor of Massachusetts and his lieutenant governor. They concluded she had written the poems ascribed to her and signed an attestation, which was included in the preface of her book of collected poems, poems on various subjects, religious and moral, published in London in 1773, because the publishers in Boston had declined to publish it. She went on to become quite the celebrity. Next. Oops. There we go. So remember the ladies. Abigail Adams in 1776 wrote to her husband, the future president, John Adams. The future First Lady wrote in part, "I long to hear that you have declared an independency. And by the way, in the new code of laws, which I suppose it will be necessary for you to make, I desire you would remember the ladies and be more generous and favorable to them than your ancestors. Do not put such unlimited power into the hands of the husbands. Remember, all men would be tyrants if they could. If particular care and attention is not paid to the ladies, we are determined to foment a rebellion and will not hold ourselves bound by any laws in which we have no voice or representation." Next. Deborah Sampson was the first woman known to serve in the Continental Army from 1782 through 1783. And after the war was over, she went to get her pension like all the other soldiers, and she was denied at first, and she had to agitate and fight for herself to be able to get the pension that she deserved, and had to go before a committee, and she did get it eventually. The committee concluded that the history of the revolution furnished no other similar example of female heroism, fidelity, and courage. Next. Oops. There we go. Elizabeth Freeman, also known as Mum Bet, sued for her freedom in 1781. She heard the new citizens in Massachusetts talking, her owner and his friends talking about their new independence from England and about the Constitution and that all men having equal rights. And she didn't see what they were saying was why she should be excluded. So she went and found a lawyer to sue for her, and the lawyer did, but he added a man to the suit because he was afraid that if it was just her being a woman, that they wouldn't win, and they did win their freedom in court. Next. Thank you. Married women's property rights. Beginning in 1839 in Mississippi, states began to enact legislation overriding the disabilities associated with coverture, which is another word for marriage. They established the rights of women to enjoy the profits of their labor, to control real and personal property, to be parties to lawsuits and contracts, and to execute wills on their own behalf. Most property rights for women emerged in piecemeal fashion over the course of decades. And because judges frequently interpreted the statutes narrowly, women often had to agitate repeatedly for more expansive and detailed legislation. Next, please. Seneca Falls Convention in 1848 had principles that included women having the right to vote as well as the Equal Rights Amendment. And that was considered a very important milestone in our history because it brought people together to network, to figure out what they wanted to do, and to start doing the work to amend the Constitution. Next. 1868 was the first GFWC Women's Club. A woman journalist started it after she was made to sit in the back when Charles Dickens came to the press club in New York City. And she thought that that wasn't fair, that she was treated differently than the other male journalists. So she started her own club. It's grown to be an international organization. And we can thank a club member when the First Amendment was going for a vote to be ratified in the Tennessee legislature. There was a man who was going to vote no until he got a note from his mother that said, please don't deny me the right to vote. And he did end up voting for it. It was quite the shocker, and everybody was thrilled that that happened. Next, please. In 1869, we had the first lawyer, but it wasn't until 1981 for us to have our first Supreme Court justice. Next, please. Marriage rights. I think I did that earlier. Sorry, I guess that slide was in there twice. Thank you. In 1872, Victoria Woodhull ran for president. That was the first time a woman ran for president. And that was before women had the right to vote. So that was a very bold move on her part. It was pretty cool. Next, please. In 1904, Margaret Haley called on to organize for teachers to be paid what their male parts were. They were paid, I think it was like a quarter or a third of what male teachers were paid. And so they went on strike and organized and got their pay raised. Even though, unfortunately, to this day, it seems that educators aren't paid as much as they should be for the value they bring to our society. Next, please. In 1913, there was civil disobedience to really force the issue that where women wanted to get the right to vote. They were tired of waiting, and those were the suffragists. They're the ones who peacefully protested that inspired later Gandhi as well as Martin Luther King Jr. Looked to the suffragists as an example of people who did civil disobedience peacefully and suffered for it, where they were tortured, jailed. There's a lot of really good documentaries and information about that, but people need to realize that people did suffer peacefully in a way for us to get a right to vote, and that was a transformative thing that we should be proud of. Next, please. World War I. It was the first time that there were female units in the military, both the Army and the Navy, and there were yeomen. And when they came back and went to get the same benefits that the other male soldiers did, they were told that they were contractors and they weren't entitled to the same benefits. And they said, no, we deserve to get the same benefits as the soldiers did. And they went on to convince President Wilson that if women could handle war, that they could handle the vote. And they were very instrumental in helping us get the 19th Amendment over the finish line. And next, please. And the next, there we go. And in 1920, the 19th Amendment passes. It was also known as the Susan B. Anthony Amendment, giving women the right to vote. That being said, though, there were women who weren't able to freely exercise that right to vote and had obstacles put in their way. It wasn't until, starting in 1943 and then 1952 and 1975 that Asian American women gained voting rights over several obstacles that they had to do that. Black women, not until 1965. Latinas, they had some movement in the 1930s through the 1950s, but not until the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was passed that it really helped them. But then there still were language barriers. In the 1975, the new Voting Rights Act addressed that. So that's really important for us to keep in mind as that it hasn't always been easy for all women, and we need to be supportive of each other as that goes, and keep people from getting barriers to being able to vote. Next, please. Okay, so this is a fun video about the 19th Amendment. We're not hearing this.
August 18th, 1920, Women's Suffrage Amendment ratified.
Stare, we heard the sound, but now we're not hearing sound.
I'm sorry, you're not hearing the sound?
Fighting for their rights.
Now we are.
Very beginning of time.
It went off again. Stare, was there something different that you did where the sound came back on? I don't know. It's just not coming through. That it was there and then it stopped. Well, it's a really wonderful video.
No volume, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay, Stare.
Sorry, no volume.
That's okay.
Sorry.
It's okay. We'll just move on. It's all right. I'll try and by the end of the program, put the link to it in the chat. It's a cute video. It's one that I learned at the Friday Power Lunch at noons on Friday. You always pick up neat things. So let's see. Are you going to go back to the slideshow, Stare? Or
Sorry, I'm lost over here, so I'll get back to you in a second.
that's okay. Do you want me to bring it up?
I'm almost with you. No, don't share. No, don't share. I'm almost with you. Please give me a moment.
I'll go back up. I'll go back out. I'll go back out.
Oops.
I'll do the stop share. Okay.
There we go.
All right. Is that the next slide after the video? Rosie the Riveter? Yeah. Nope. Back the other way. The other direction. Stop going forward. So Stare, can you back up?
Okay, so help me out here. Okay, I'm still trying to admit people to the room. Okay,
okay.
This way, we have the power, or this way, Andrea
Yeah,
Miller?
the other way. Now you're at the very end.
Okay, so this way, then.
Keep going.
Nope, that's the one after the video. Okay, so then that's
no. There's two videos.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay.
Yeah, you got to go back to the Dolly Parton video.
Or just start at the beginning if you can.
I got this. Okay. That was the one after the video.
Right, Rosie the Riveter. There you go.
All right. There should have been a slide about the go before the video. Was there one with the nurses getting off the bed? Oh no. Well, yeah, go before the video. Yeah, that one. D-Day.
Okay.
Yeah. So D-Day, right behind. Well,
sorry, I'm just trying to move my cursor to mute myself. There. Oh, here. Okay. Now let me mute myself very carefully.
All right. Well, well, actually, I do see where. So everybody saw Rosie the Riveter. Anyhow, the importance of Rosie the Riveter was part of the government marketing propaganda to get women to come out of their homes and to go into the factories and work, because the men went off to war and they needed people to build the planes and everything. And so the women left their homes and went and they worked in the factories. And when the men came home from work and they're like, okay, women, you guys can go back home. They're like, well, we like working. We like getting money. Like, you know, you can just put that back in the box. So that worked good. And this is a photograph from D-Day. And they weren't the first off the boats. The men were with the combat going into the beaches of Normandy, where they just got slaughtered pretty much, but they kept coming. But notice that not very far behind them were the women who came off to tend to the soldiers that had been hurt. And notice they weren't wearing any like protection, no helmets, no anything. I mean, these are some bold, brave people that got out there and served our country. And I think that's really important for people to see that. And I'm glad that a journalist captured that. And we have that proof today. Okay, next. Thanks, dear. All right. One of the things that women have had to prove is that we can accomplish athletic events like a marathon. They used to be where women were not allowed to run in marathons. It would hurt our delicate women parts. And so Catherine Switzer registered for the Boston Marathon as Kay Switzer. And when they started the marathon, she slipped in and started running. And word got back to the organizers that a woman was running in the marathon. And so one of them went and chased her down and tried to pull her off the course. And you can see in this series of photographs that the men stopped the guy from pulling her off the course, and they protected her, and she completed the marathon, proving that a woman could actually run a marathon. And I put that down as an example of women could not have made the milestones that we have without support from allies that recognized our worth, our value, and that we can do amazing things and to help us along the way. Okay, next, please. Juanetta Krebs was an American economist. There was also this fiction that women aren't good at business or economics, but she was an educator and a businesswoman who served as the 24th United States Secretary of Commerce under President Jimmy Carter in 1977. So those are important barriers that we need to remember, that somebody had to cross that threshold. So next, please. All right, the Equal Rights Amendment started getting momentum again in the 1970s. It was a long way from Seneca Falls in 1848, but it got a second wind in the 1970s. And next, please. 2004, there was a monumental March for Women's Lives. I'm not sure, but I think it was pretty close to one of the top marches in DC that had happened. It was a very strong turnout. I was there with my family. If you could go to the next slide, you might see me somewhere in those dots. As a younger Freeda Cathcart with her husband and kids in tow. They were just itty bitties. They got to go on fun field trips with their mom. Next, please. In 2013, we celebrated 100 years of women's suffrage by having a march in DC and commemorating the march that happened 100 years earlier. And that was a march where the suffragists got out there and they were experienced mob violence, and the police did not protect them. and they broke bottles and threw broken glass at the women and punched them and really beat them up. Similar to the photographs that you might have seen of the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and with the people marching for Black people's right to vote, the Voting Rights Act, and how they were beaten. Very similar was what happened with the suffragists back in 2013. And when they did the march, there was this controversy where the Southern suffragists didn't want the Delta. Oh, Andrea, please correct me if I'm wrong. Is it the
Sigma Theta Incorporated?
Yes, which incorporated that year. Says the Black sorority. They wanted them to march in the back, and it created. It was hard. They weren't sure if they were going to be able to pull off the march, but they did pull off the march. It was pretty cool. 100 years later, I'm glad to say that I attended the march, and the Delta Theta Sigmas led the march that year in celebration of their 100th anniversary, and everybody else fell behind them. So it's neat to mark that milestone in a significant way of understanding what happened in the past and knowing that we can respect and do better now. Next, please. Domestic violence. The Violence Against Women Act passed in 1994, but it wasn't until 2021 that the Virginia Appellate Court upheld conviction of a husband for raping his wife. It used to be legal to beat women. And then, it's not that long ago where if you were married, if you said, no, I don't feel like it, honey, too bad. And there was no protection until just not that long ago. So we need to remember that. That's really important. Next, please. Whoops, backwards, I think. The Lilly Ledbetter Act under President Obama's administration. Passed that finally, requiring equal pay for equal work, which is great, but there's really no teeth in it yet. So we still have work to do with the teeth, which I think will be coming. I know it will be coming up at the end of the program. Okay, next. Say her name, Sandra Bland, with the Black Lives Matter. There was a whole lot of attention being focused, and rightly so, on the Black men that were being killed, but there were Black women at the same time being killed, and there was a movement to say her name and to not let Sandra Bland or Breonna Taylor or anybody else not get acknowledged for being killed too. Next, please. The Dobbs decision. That is a big pushback from what we had achieved, and it really stunned people that happened, taking away making it where states could determine if women could have control of their bodies and have access to health care that they needed, and they didn't have their federal protection anymore. So that's a real problem to this day, because women have died since that decision because of that decision. Women have lost their fertility because of that decision. And it's just getting uglier and worse out there. Where just recently a woman was denied access to prenatal care because the doctor didn't want to provide care to her because she wasn't married. So we've got some work to do. And wait a second, something's going on. Stare, I don't know. You just went through the entire, are you still there? Stare? Can you go back to where?
Yes, I'm sorry. It's just, I moved my mouse and there we go.
Yeah.
So hang on. So we've done.
We were back on the Dobbs decision.
Okay. Yeah, I know, but I all I can see is what's coming ahead of me.
Okay, so you're at the very end. So you need to go back.
Okay. All right.
Past that.
Okay.
Past that.
There, I'm here.
There.
Yeah,
okay,
sorry.
now.
Thank you.
There you go. Just one. Okay, so the next slide from that, though, but just one. There. Okay. So this is encouraging people to stand up and speak out. People's stories are really important. People need to know that they're being hurt, that women are being hurt, and that they're dying. Fight like a girl. Next slide, please. Rally. Get out there in the streets, join rallies, make sure that they don't forget women's issues with all the other issues that are happening right now that we matter to. Next, please. Celebrate the victories when we have them. This is a law that was passed on protecting women's right to breastfeed in public. I mean, these are the type of things that we still need to do through legislation to make sure that we're not harassed. So that was something that happened. I forget what year it was. Jennifer's pregnant there, so somewhere I think like 2017 or 18. Next, please. Make her story. That is Ketanji Brown Jackson, Judge Jackson Brown. Anyhow, Supreme Court Justice and the first vice president, first woman vice president, Kamala Harris, made history, and that's really significant. That's important. Milestones. We're going to have a woman governor in Virginia this year, one way or the other. That's really cool. Next, please. Okay. Stair, why don't you let me see if I can share my screen on this one and get it to work. Do you want me to try? Okay.
I will go back and see if I can pull up something a little better while you're doing that.
Okay.
August 26th.
Okay. And I got to go back here.
August 26th is Women's Equality Day, but today we are less equal than we are led to believe. Our rights are being eroded, from our bodies to our paychecks to our dignity. But no matter how hard anti-equality forces try to take us backwards, we pledge our belief in the Equal Rights Amendment, the 20th Amendment to our Constitution. The ERA matters for me, for you, and for everyone else in their full diversity. This is our era. It's time to claim the 20th Amendment.
There. Did you hear it?
Yes.
Yay. That's great. Stair, did you want to pick up the slideshow? Do you want me to go back to the slideshow? Oh, Stair's back. She's on it. So the next slide from that then. So
that's a pretty big ask, Freeda. So give me a second.
Okay, so I'll go ahead. So that video that you just watched launched this morning at 9 o'clock by the ERA Coalition. And it is the launching of their campaign of to claim the 28th Amendment, because we did it. Virginia was the 28th. Virginia was the 38th state to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment, which is now the 28th Amendment. And so there's confusion about if it's been ratified. Yes, it's definitely been ratified. There are the American Bar Association has affirmed that it was ratified. Constitutional scholars have affirmed that it's been ratified. And there are currently test cases that are, well, they're not test cases, they're actual cases that are going through the courts right now, which we feel confident that they will find that the Equal Rights Amendment is the 28th Amendment, because we did it. We did it all. But they're trying to pretend like we didn't do it. So that's all right. Well, but we need to educate people. We need to claim it. We need to let people know that it really happened. And President Biden didn't ratify the Equal Rights Amendment. All the states, 38 states, ratified the Equal Rights Amendment, and Virginia happened to be the last. And I'm really proud to be part of that movement that happened in Virginia, and everybody that worked on it. We did a great job. So lest we forget, we must remember that, until the Equal Rights Amendment was part of the Constitution, and there are constitutions that are published, we're still waiting for the government to do what they're supposed to do. But there are people publishing constitutions with the 28th Amendment in it, because women deserved equal rights. Everybody deserves equal rights. So many people have fought for our nation, and been willing to give the ultimate sacrifice that have been suppressed by having their rights respected, and to be able to use them to the full extent as other people. So next slide, please. And in order to keep our rights, we need to use our power, and we have that power, and that is the power of voting, which leads us to our panel. Next, please. Andrea Miller is here today, and I think I'm just gonna introduce them, and then we'll go into the speakers mode for when they're speaking, if that's okay. So Andrea Miller, she is a member of Common Ground, or actually a founding board member of Common Ground, and I'm going to let her explain what that is later. I know her; she's also with the Women's Political Caucus, and I'm sorry, but I shut out my screen that had my notes for this, Andrea. But she is a powerhouse in Virginia as far as helping people learn how to register people to vote and how to train people to do it, and just a big part of the movement of making sure that people are the ability to vote. And Mirna Hosny has a financial background, and she immigrated here from Bolivia. And she is a member of the Latina network, and she is here today, Mirna Hosny. And we welcome both of you here. And I'm going to ask Stare, I think, to stop sharing screen. So the question I asked both of them to reflect upon, and this is my favorite part of the program when I do this with either a group of people or, as we're doing tonight, as a presentation with a panel, is how old were you when you registered to vote, and what motivated you to vote for the first time? So Andrea, would you like to go first with that?
I was, let's see, do we have, yeah, there we go. I was, of course, 18 when I registered to vote, and I had worked with my mother on getting Illinois to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment since I was 12 years old. So that was a very, very, very important thing for me. I am 71 years old now. So I've been working on the Equal Rights Amendment for nearly 60 years. So it was the Equal Rights Amendment. That was what I worked on with my mother. And it was also voting rights. My father and his uncles had all marched with Dr. King on voting rights. You mute, Freeda.
There, I'm back. Oh, that doesn't surprise me, but wow, that is so super duper cool. That is so super duper cool. Mirna, how about you?
Thank you. First of all, thank you very much for having me here. I met Freeda a bit ago through the League of Women's Voters of the Roanoke Valley, and we coincided again in another meeting with Points of Diversity, and we're so happy to see her. I honestly, I'm doing the math, and I did not register to vote until, I think it was an automatic process when I got my citizenship, probably 10 years after I came to the States. So my first election was when I was 38 years old, but I'm assuming that I was registered when I got the citizenship in maybe 2000 or something like that. So, yep.
And what motivated you to vote for the first time?
You know, I think that when you first come to the States as an immigrant, you are not focused really in the politics of it. You're focused on, I have to get a job, I have to go to school, what does a credit hour mean, what is a loan, what do I need in order to work? So honestly, politics and voting is not voting or jury duty or anything like that. It's not very important. It becomes more as you start becoming part of this society, you start realizing that you have to take a stand because of two things: of the values that you are bringing with yourself, of the things that you want to see and you don't want to see because you have witnessed that from where you're coming from, and it becomes evident where your alignment comes when it comes to political affiliation, right? I think that when you come to this country, you don't know what a Republican or a Democrat is. You have no idea. What you bring is a set of beliefs. And then as you start kind of living here and you start to experiencing life and how things work here, you start aligning yourself with something. Something that is here or there. But you don't find that spot until you are a little bit more settled, until you actually realize that your actions will affect the next person. In my case, my actions will affect the next immigrant. So it became important to me in 2008 to kind of set the tone for understanding that my vote is going to help somebody else, whether it's an immigrant now, whether it's a school funding because now I have children, whether it's safety regarding gun control because now I have a family and I have friends that work at schools. So I think that it becomes a necessity because now you're part of it. So that I think that's my story.
Thank you so much for sharing it. I think that's really important to hear the different perspectives. Andrea, who was raised in our country and was part of fighting for civil rights, from a child onward, and very much immersed in the transformation of what was happening in our country. And then you coming here and just trying to survive and figure out where you were living, just like the whole thing. But then, like you said, as your family grew and you got part of the community, you started noticing how you felt about what was happening and being able to participate. So I'm curious, Mirna, in Bolivia, was there a democracy there when you grew up there? Did you grow up with people voting, or was that something that didn't happen?
No, yes, we did actually. And I was doing a little bit of research, and thanks to this invite, I thought, let me learn a little bit about, because when I left, I was 20. I was mostly a teen that is kind of lost, didn't vote before I left the country. So we had what's called the Agrarian Reform in 1952, and that's the first year where, with this reform of land ownership and with more social reforms, came also the right of voting for women. So that was not until, 1952. I did not vote back in my country. My parents, of course, did, and then my siblings do now. We are in the middle of an election right now. Actually, we just had elections in August in Bolivia. And it's going on a second round, which is unprecedented, because the party that got the majority did not get enough majority. So now they're going on to a second round, which is very, very strange. And you don't see that often. But yeah, Bolivia is also going through a process of change and a lot of upheaval, some inflation and so forth. So it's happening everywhere.
Yeah, it is. I think a lot of it has to do with us creeping out of that pandemic that affected the entire world economy and everything. It's been a bumpy road all over the place. I'm curious, Andrea, as far as I'm curious for both of you, actually, as we head into this November. It's elections in Virginia. We have our state elections. And I was just wondering, what particular issues are you concerned about, either on the state or the federal level, that you think is important for people to consider when they're going to vote, that could impact women's lives?
I spent 10 years lobbying on Capitol Hill, so I am very involved, or was very involved until 2019 in federal politics. I was one of the lead lobbyists for removing the ratification deadline on the Equal Rights Amendment so that Nevada, Illinois, and Virginia would be able to ratify, and those ratifications would count. So, of course, on the federal level, voting rights, we have a new bill that just got introduced that wants to end vote by mail for non-military voters who live overseas. So voting is still really huge for me, will always be. Of course, there is the SAVE Act at the federal level, where, if passed, would require women who were married and changed their name to have a bridge document, and real ID cannot be your bridge document. Your bridge document would need to be a U.S. passport. Did you know that of all the states, 50 states that have real ID, there are only 5 states whose real ID qualifies to prove that they are a U.S. citizen? Virginia's does not.
Oh,
Right. It does not say U.S. citizen. It says where you were born, but it doesn't say U.S. citizen. So yes, and then also I will lobby on climate. And from 2017 to 2019, I chaired the People's Budget Campaign. HR1, the budget that just came out, as Reverend Barber would say, budgets are moral documents. This is the most immoral document I have ever laid eyes on. So I will be going back on the Hill, and I will be pushing people to reintroduce the people's budget, a budget that actually helps people rather than hurts people. In Virginia, for instance, because of the cuts to Medicaid, which don't occur until 2027, the health insurers are already raising health insurance rates, and Virginia health insurance rates are projected to go up potentially as much as 24%. Aetna, CVS, is leaving the individual healthcare market nationwide.
wow. I know there's a lot of fear in far Southwest Virginia. There's 2 rural hospitals that are teetering on closing the doors, and they were already in trouble before that happened, and they don't think that they're going to make it, and everybody is pretty upset about that situation. Yeah.
One of the other things this bill does, this will be really, really quick, is it caps grants for attending colleges and universities for medical degrees at $200,000. That is total for your whole course of study. So this means we potentially are going to begin limiting the number of doctors that we produce here. A friend of mine is a doctor, and she saw them, and she said, are people getting their medical degrees in Cuba? You don't get a medical degree in the United States for $200,000.
Wow. Well, that's really not good timing because the population is getting older. I think we need more doctors and women doctors. We need more women doctors. We need doctors for everybody, but it's good to see more women crossing those boundaries as far as being astronauts and so many things where, like you said, like, I want to be a fireman. It's like, no, you can be a dancer or something like that, secretary or teacher. And it's just like, I want to be a fire person. I can be a fire person. And I mean, they revamped the firehouses where we live because they weren't set up to have women there with the men. And and it's so good to see, like, that they acknowledge that they need to have a quarters for women to be able to sleep there at the firehouse and have their own facilities. And these are the adjustments that we make as we're just like, well, how does that happen? I remember when the first U.S. Senator women went to the Senate building, and there wasn't like a women's room anywhere. And they were just like, all right, we need to make some substantive changes here. So Mirna, as far as heading into this November's election on the state or federal level, are there any particular issues that are motivating you or that you're particularly concerned about that you want to bring to people's Andrea, that was great flagging those issues. Those are very, very important issues.
The SAVE Act is definitely something that actually got me closer to understanding a little bit about the midterm, because honestly, midterms were not something that I was looking at, my family. It's a big concern that we could see a huge amount of the population having that roadblock to be able to vote. And I think we all know what that means if that comes to pass. But the issue that it's always lingering in my heart is immigration. It is so close to understanding how people are, even in Roanoke, we're having instances where children are, Hispanic children that are U.S. citizens are not going to school because parents are feeling like something can happen. So we are seeing that these children have not started school with the other ones. We're seeing people not going to grocery stores, not going to work. Some raids that happened on Williamson Road not long ago. People are scared. We've had events. I volunteer with an organization that sometimes has events for either education or healthcare or things like that. And our numbers have come down because people are afraid to get resources, information. So that it's really something that is very upsetting and very sad in my community.
It is, and I've heard that, and I think it's really important to hear these stories, to know where we are and how people are afraid, being hurt, being separated from their loved ones and their community. So it's important to know what's going on. We can't hide from what's going on, but we can't forget the power that we have, that people fought so hard for, that we can still exercise and make a difference with. One of the things that concerns me coming up with this November's election is that people make sure that they check to make that their voter registration is active. A lot of people don't realize that thousands of people were